And it's Ken Kraetzer with another edition of the West Point Football Report. It's Air Force Week, so this is the Beat Air Force edition of our show. Just like to remind you, we're coming from Bob Hyland Sports Page Restaurant in downtown White Plains, New York. And our show is a program of Sons of the American Legion Radio, part of Squadron 135, right here in White Plains, New York. And we're part of the American Legion, the world's largest veterans organization. Now, it's going to be a big day at West Point, as happens every 2 years when we have one of the Commander-in-Chief Trophy games at West Point. Earlier this year, Air Force defeated Navy in Colorado Springs, so if they win this game, they will win the coveted Commander-in-Chief Trophy, which is now at Annapolis and would move back. But boy, does Army and their seniors want to have a say in that. We talked a little bit with both Larry Dixon and Terry Baggett last night, and they both are so anxious to play well, to do well, and to beat Air Force and then beat Navy in their senior year. It's going to be a challenge. Air Force has really improved their team up from a very disastrous season by their standards, 2-10 last year. They are 5-2 on the year, owning wins over, in addition to Navy, Boise State. They have had a good year so far. But it's always, anything can happen when you're playing a Commander-in-Chief Trophy game. All the VIPs from the military are expected to be there from General Dempsey on down. And so it will be an interesting game. Full house. It's been sold out at Michie Stadium for weeks. And a game all of the alumni and fans of the team really look forward to seeing. So far this year, just going over Air Force's season, they played Nichols and won that one. They lost at Wyoming 17-13, in September. Then they had wins over Georgia State, and then the big one over Boise State on September 27th. That one 28-14. And then, of course, a win over Navy on October 4th, which was 30-21. They lost at Utah State 34-16, and then are coming off a win over New Mexico 35-31. So an impressive Air Force team. We'll talk a little bit more about them in a second. Really good news today at West Point. And it's been a kind of a difficult week, as our fans know, but we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But great news today came from the National Football Foundation, and that is that the Army senior Terry Baggett from Chicago, Illinois, was announced by the National Football Foundation as one of their Scholar Athletes of the Year. There were a select group named today, about 15 players from the different divisions of college football, and Terry Baggett is one of the those named. He wins a scholarship with that, and then is also a finalist for the Campbell Trophy. The award that Andrew Rodriguez won a few years ago in 2011 has his name on the facade at Michie Stadium for that trophy. And so we'll see what happens. I got to think Terry Baggett, who is a chemical engineering major, 3.37 grade point average, playing, as a running back, would have a good shot at it. We'll see. And there are players from schools like Northern Arizona, Duke, Kansas State, Trinity from Connecticut, Indiana, Stanford, Jordan Richards, their safety. Major in public policy, Mike Sadler, a punter from Michigan State, and Tyler Varga, the tailback from Yale, who we saw have a spectacular day at the Yale Bowl against Army. He is in ecology and major. He had a nice article about him in the New York Times last week that he'd like to go to medical school. And an interesting group, the center from Northwestern, Brandon Vitable, is also on the list. So some top players, but it's great to see Terry Baggett included in this. We did an interview last night, which we'll insert into this. It's also available on our Facebook page, West Point Football Report, and also on my YouTube page for Ken Kraetzer. And so, Terry, a fellow who's always smiling, always personable, but when we ask him about how he does it, it's always play football and study and then do the military requirements. Gave us a little bit of a surprise on his branch choice. All the Army seniors get an envelope in just around Thanksgiving, just after they come back, I believe, before the Army-Navy game, about what branch of the Army that they have been assigned to. They get to make recommendations. Preferences are submitted, but based on their class rank and their standing, they have their branches selected, and then later on their duty station will be selected. And so big days in the upcoming careers of these Army seniors. Now, we mentioned difficult news came out on last weekend that the superintendent of West Point addressed in a note to the West Point community, General Caslin, about an incident that really went back to January, an unfortunate event on a recruiting visit, which left 20 West Point players facing a very severe disciplinary review at the academy. Several administrators were also cited in it by the academy. West Point self-reported to the NCAA on the incident, and the cadets were disciplined. And as Coach Munkin said, they are continuing to feel the effects of that in loss of privileges and other disciplinary actions taken. As we know, often cadets have to walk in the courtyard to walk off demerits and other disciplinary situations. So Coach Munkin was very straightforward in his press conference on Tuesday, accepting responsibility. It happened in his third week on the job, and so he said that he had imposed his own discipline on the players and any of the staff under his supervision that were involved. And knowing Coach Munkin, he is a direct guy and a forceful guy, as is General Caslin, and so they did administer the situation the way it needed to be done. So anyway, the game on Saturday, full house at Michie Stadium. Army 2-5, coming off a disappointing loss at Kent State on the bye week. The Air Force team 5-2, rebuilding very quickly off a 2-10 season. The Air Force leads the series with Army to everyone's chagrin at West Point, 33-14, and it's 12-10 at West Point that Air Force leads. But as we all remember, 2 years ago, Army won 41-21 at Michie Stadium. The first win at home against Air Force since 1996. And we remember Trent Steelman had a big day, running for 101 yards. 4 of 6 passing for 100 yards also, which makes a difference. And Army led 35-7 in the third quarter before Air Force had a couple of late touchdowns to tighten the score. So this is an important game for Army in so many different ways. Big crowd, lots of VIPs there. It's for the Commander-in-Chief Trophy to keep the game against Navy to be the deciding factor in the game. If Army wins this one over Air Force, then Army has a chance to take the Commander-in-Chief Trophy with a win against Navy in December in Baltimore, which is what everybody is shooting for, to make that game for the Commander-in-Chief Trophy and the first win for Army in over a decade in that game. And this group of seniors would dearly like to break the streak and be the first team from Army in football to defeat Navy in 12 years. So should be a good one. Looking down a little bit more at the Air Force statistics, their quarterback is Cale Pearson from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And He has had a good year both running and throwing the football. Pearson is 152 effectiveness rating, 62 of 107, throwing the ball, 1 interception, 58% completion rate, 7 touchdowns, and is averaging 136 yards throwing per game. And so that gives Air Force a good option throwing and running the ball. Their running game is led by Jacoby Owens, who is averaging 105 yards a game, and he's got 4 touchdowns. Pearson himself is a running threat. He's been running for 52 yards a game and has 4 touchdowns. Air Force is rushing 273 yards a game, a little bit less than Army. They're 11th in the country. Army is 4th in the country in rushing. Their best receiver is Jalen Robinette, who has caught 25 on the year for 67 yards a game and a touchdown. And Garrett Brown, who makes the TDs for them, 5 touchdowns on 22 catches this year for 48 yards a game. So just taking a look for a second at their defense, this is an area of big improvement for Air Force. They have cut down the yards per game that they're giving rushing by almost 100 yards. And just looking at some of their defensive players, we'll come back to that in just a second. They have had good play from their inside linebackers, just like Army has had, and that's been really some of the keys to their success on defense. So looking a little bit at, taking a little bit of a look at Army, the cadets are rushing so far for a per-game average of 319 yards. Their opponents, 176. The challenge for Army in offense, not getting much passing this year. They are averaging per game just 76 yards. And to many observers, the key for Army is to get 100 yards passing. If they can, they're expected to start Angel Santiago over A.J. Sure. This has been pretty much a week-to-week decision for Coach Munkin and his staff. In the Tuesday press conference, Coach said that he expected Angel Santiago to be the starter unless something in practice changed his mind. Sometimes it's been interesting. Most observers feel that A.J. Sure has a better arm throwing the ball downfield, but has struggled with fumbles at times. And so Angel Santiago is a player that seems to do well coming off the bench because of his experience backing up first Trent Steelman and then playing a considerable portion of last year when Sure was hurt. So we'll see what happens on the starter, but we expect it to be Angel Santiago. Now we're going to take a little bit of a break and come back, and we're going to play for you our interview with Terry Baggett, the Army senior from Chicago, Illinois. Okay, we're back at the Sports Page Restaurant. This is Ken Kraetzer for the West Point Football Report. Army Black Knights will take on Air Force. It's an 11:39 kickoff at Michie Stadium on Saturday, so got to get there early to the stadium, see all the pageantry. The West Point Band, I'm sure, will be starting their performance at about 11 o'clock, about a half hour earlier than normal. This week. This is being broadcast on the big CBS Network, you might say, the full network will see this nationally. And a lot of festivities, Black Knight Alley before the game, a lot of things to see and do, and for to bring children. Normally there are a couple of West Point teams there signing autographs. And so things to do before the game. But do try and get there early. Security, as always, will be tight getting in and getting into the gate. So you want to try to be at the stadium by 11 o'clock and try to get there earlier to watch festivities in Black Knight Alley. So it should be an interesting day. Just some a few more thoughts about Army. Looking at their offense in terms of rushing, Angel Santiago has been their leading rusher, 126 yards a game. Larry Dixon, 97 yards per game. I think everyone expects that his leadership will really be what Army is counting on. Larry Dixon is really the player Army looks to. He's a 4-year starter. He became a fullback starting the middle of his freshman year, and really is such a tough player. He takes so many hits a game being the fullback, because it's not just when he carries the ball, but in every play, he's the first person the defensive linemen go after, because they always fake to him, even if Santiago carries the ball or they pitch out to one of the halfbacks. On virtually every offensive play, Larry Dixon takes a hit. And we talked to him Wednesday night at West Point. Larry Dixon was saying that the summer conditioning has really helped him be able to withstand the rigors of a challenging season like this, where he is just taking a beating on every game. But he's still smiling, looking forward to the game, and leading his team onto the field with his brothers, as he says. And again, you can see that interview with Larry Dixon on our page, West Point Football Report. Looking at some of the other aspects of the Army team, looking at defense, really it's going to be critical. Army's been giving up 35 points a game. They've got to cut it down, what would you say, under 25 to try to have a good shot at this one. Jeremy Timpf, the sophomore from Arizona, leads the team in tackles, the inside linebacker. Terrific story. How much he's been able to contribute, 9 tackles for loss on the year. And so that he's been one of the key additions to the team. The second inside linebacker, Andrew King from Queens, is second on the team in tackles with 44. Number 11, you can't miss him out on the field. And what do you say about Josh Jackson? 43 tackles on the season, and just so solid on pass defense, on special teams as the punt returner, kickoff returner, and also the player that downs the ball on the punts, often with Alex Chardot having been so effective getting the ball on punts inside the opponent's 10-yard line. It's very often number 3, Josh Jackson, that's downing that football and pinning defenders back, which has really set up some scoring opportunities for Army. Just thinking back a little bit to the Ball State game when Army pinned Ball State down near the goal line and forced a punt, with a short field, Army scored several plays later. Chris Carnegie, a cornerback. The cornerbacks for Army have just been terrific, Josh Jackson and Chris Carnegie. Hayden Pierce, 28 tackles at one of the safeties. Stephen Riccardi, 28 tackles. Joe Drummond at defensive end has had 13 solo tackles, 20 on the season. And Jeff Bacon, 20 tackles before he was injured, has a cast on his ankle, so we're not sure if there's a chance that he can come back. I'm sure he is thinking about some way getting back to play and contribute in the Navy game, but we'll have to see on that if it's still an opportunity. Some other big games this weekend. Obviously, after Air Force and Army play the early game on Saturday, later that day will be another big game on CBS. as Navy hosts that team from Indiana. Notre Dame, ranked number 6 in the country. That down at FedEx Field in Washington. I assume there'll be a crowd of well over 80,000 at that one, and an opportunity for Navy to see if they can stay with Notre Dame. Obviously, their quarterback, Keenan Reynolds, is a player to watch. He's had some injuries this year, but the last couple of games he's been closer to full strength, and we know what a great football player Keenan Reynolds is when he's at full strength for Ken Neomatalolo's team that we will see in about 6 weeks in Baltimore. A couple other big ones coming up. Boston College, the team of our friend and proprietor here, Bob Hyland, at the sports page in White Plains, they will play at Virginia Tech. That also a 12:30 game. And then a big one locally as the Big Ten again appears at Rutgers, Wisconsin. The Badgers will be at Rutgers, another big test for Kyle Flood's team. And, what a streak Rutgers has had playing Michigan, going to Nebraska last week, where they held their own. It was a game where they could have gotten blown out, but they held their own, played a strong second half, even after their quarterback, Gary Nova, was hurt. And so that should be an interesting one down in Piscataway. Purdue is going to be out at number 16, Nebraska, and Illinois will be at Ohio State among some of the Big Ten ranked teams. In the Big 12, Kansas will be at number 12, Baylor, and number 9, TCU will be at West Virginia in Morgantown. Always an interesting place to see a football game in Morgantown. So that is some of the big games, and just take a look at the Southeast Conference. Florida will be at number 10, Georgia, in the annual rivalry game played in Jacksonville, Florida. Auburn, number 4, against 2 ranked teams. Auburn, number 4, will be at Ole Miss. Number 7, that's a 7 o'clock start in Mississippi. And another big game, as Mississippi has become the college football capital this year, Arkansas will play at Mississippi State, number 1 ranked in the country. And Tennessee will be at South Carolina. So those are some of the other big games in college football this weekend. It should be fun, as it always is. But all our eyes are going to be focused on Michie Stadium and the contest with Air Force, the Commander-in-Chief trophy at stake, certainly for Air Force, and a chance for Army to win that if they can. It's going to be a 11:39 kickoff, so again, worth reminding you to get to Michie Stadium very early if you're going. You really want to be there about 9 o'clock and get through security, get parked, and then enjoy the day. So many nice places to visit. Visit the plane and Black Knight's Alley, walk around the academy, but do try to get there early. Lots of time for tailgating after the game. So you want to be at the stadium by 11 o'clock, certainly, to get into security, and that's really when the band's going to start. So really want to try to get to the stadium by 10 o'clock. Again, Army 2 and 5 taking on 5 and 2 Air Force. For Army, keys on the game: get ahead early, like they did 2 years ago when they got ahead 35-7, and avoid mistakes. Try to generate turnovers on defense. Army's had a bit of a committee of safeties, and that's going to be one of the areas that's going to be tested. And Air Force is going to test early is throwing the ball deep against. Really, it's been a number of young players in the defensive backfield for Army, and we'll have to see how they can hold up. But will it really be kind of a test? Army's got to get a pass rush, and so Air Force does not have a big offensive line. Their players are in the range of 265 to 280 is the largest. So it's not like they're playing Wisconsin with all 300-pound linemen. So it's a little bit of what they used to call a fair fight game. And as far as the size of the line is concerned, in fact, Army might have a little bit of an edge this year in size of offensive line. And then avoiding mistakes, avoiding penalties, and holding on to the football, winning field position. But I think it's going to be an interesting one for Army. The seniors have been working towards this. It's as everyone who's visited West Point knows, it's all over the academy. Two slogans: beat Air Force and beat Navy. It's a special rivalry. These are players that understand what each other goes through in terms of off-the-field requirements academically, attending a top school, taking extraordinarily difficult courses, often engineering at all the schools, and other sciences, and going through the military drills as well, from those they did when they arrived, basic training, to those they go through every summer to build their proficiency in military skills and orientation. So it's going to be a good one. Looking forward to be up at Michie Stadium. We'll have reports on our Facebook page, West Point Football Report, and our Twitter page, Sons Legion Radio. So you can follow along, and then we'll be in the post-game press conference with the players and Coach Jeff Munkin to hear all the details. If you have a question, send it in on Twitter, and maybe we'll be able to ask that question on Sons Legion Radio. And, when we do our reporting, we're always thinking about our members of the military serving overseas, perhaps those in Afghanistan. We even have soldiers and military back in Iraq and other places that we can only imagine where U.S. military are serving. So if you are there, our best wishes and thank you for your service, and we'll try to do the best we can to tell you about this day at West Point, Army and Air Force. A great rivalry, lots of fun, but it's a great sight seeing all the people from the military and all of the cadets and the Falcons from the Air Force Academy. So for the West Point Football Report and Sons of the American Legion Radio, coming to you from Bob Hyland's Restaurant, the sports page in downtown White Plains. This is Ken Kraetzer. We are a program of Sons of the American Legion Radio, part of Squadron 135 in White Plains, New York, all part of the world's largest veterans organization, the American Legion. So good night, everybody, and 2 words for this weekend, beat Air Force. Enjoy the game.